knowledge. This is Brave TV.
We actually have to turn this into Americans becoming brave and taking back what rightfully ours.
And you can't be healthy if you're given false information. You can't be free if you're given false information. So I think that, the foundation is, it's knowledge. It's how knowledgeable are you willing to be? How much research, study, how much are you willing to be a student of life? Right? At the end of the day, to own what we're supposed to own as humans and as beings, we have to be brave.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Friday, July 19th it is. Post RNC Republican National Convention that finished off last night with the opera singer, which I got my thoughts on that. But this is not your grandma and grandpa's mom and dad's Republican Party. I can tell you that much right now, which is quite interesting. It is Friday, and here's Jason Goodman back to chat with us. And Jason, first of all, happy Friday to you.
Thank you. Happy Friday to you, Jason. Glad to be back. I'm not sure how to control the color temperature on this camera, so I look a little...
No worries.
Yeah.
No worries.
I'll update that for next time, but thanks for having me back on the show.
The whole world, especially America, but the whole world is a little different than the last time we talked.
Yes.
Talk about stuff happening. Where do you want to start?
Well, look, I agree with you completely. That RNC convention, I almost don't have words for it, because it's like, they've, by missing Donald Trump, and it does really make you think about, even if you're not religious, things about like God and fate, right? And like, how did this happen? Even if it's just luck but the thing is, for me, this really started when Donald Trump Jr.'s daughter, President Trump's granddaughter, Kaya Trump, gave that speech. Because first of all,
I didn't make it through that one.
Because to me, it was like, first of all, I guess I was aware that Donald Trump had kids, but that was like a 10-year-old girl the last time she was anywhere. So like, it wasn't really in the public mind, but boy, did she come into her own. I don't know if I've ever heard an adult, except for Donald Trump last night. That was one of the best, most heartfelt and touching speeches I have ever heard. And when they cut to that shot of Trump's face as Don Jr. was hugging her, that was one of the most emotional things I've ever seen on television. You cannot act that. You cannot make that up.
So it's interesting take on that, because I have it from my viewpoint, but you have it from a cinema viewpoint as well, correct?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. If you got actors and tried to make a scene out of that, you could not. The raw emotion, the humanity of that event, the notion that that 17-year-old woman knows. She's from the standpoint of, oh my God, my grandfather almost got killed. You've got your mind developed sufficiently to understand what that means at age 17. Okay. I'm not saying the mind is fully developed, but that part is. A 5-year-old, 3-year-old, they miss grandpa, but it's not the same thing. But when she gave that speech, I just don't understand how Joy Reid has become one of the most reprehensible psychopaths I can think of. Because Jason, you and I talk about things, and one of the reasons I really have come to appreciate you, I know we've only been working together for a couple of weeks, but your approach of examining evidence and sticking to facts, this is why you and I are connecting, and you and John Cullen and I, this is why. And Joy Reid saying that the bandage is fake, or he was hit by glass, or this was staged. Let's just break that down for a second, because as crazy as this sounds, I agree with her, it was staged.
She
But
also
not by
said that
Donald Trump.
she also said that Joe Biden getting over COVID was equivalent to
It's, Jen Psaki was looking at her like, somebody choked this woman. I mean, she was like, how did you just say that? But I agree that it was staged, and there's elements of it that do appear staged, but not by Trump. No one would stage an event where, like, just shoot me in the ear and then I'll duck. It's like, okay, now it's emerged. Somebody has from an angle with the bullet actually penetrating his ear. And when he spoke about it last night, that was also that superseded Kaya Trump as the most emotional thing I've ever seen. Because you know what? This is like a distillation of Trump, right? And you see, Joe Biden, if you look at speeches of Joe Biden from even 2, 3, 5 years ago, he's slowed down in a cognition sense.
Oh,
I am not a doctor at all. Nothing I'm saying is medical. I'm just a lay person looking at the guy. And people sometimes accuse me of being, ADD, attention deficit disorder. I've never spoken to a professional about that. I've never been diagnosed with that. And frankly, I don't even know if I believe that that's a thing, because it assumes that anybody deserves my attention in the first place. But a lot of people who I have spoken to who get my way of thinking, they just say that is the way they think, and the way that I sort of spray ideas out there sometimes, it appeals to certain people. And I detect that Donald Trump thinks and operates like that a little bit. And what I detected last night is not that he's slowed down from a cognition standpoint, but he has slowed down from a smelling the roses standpoint. He no longer feels like he's moving at 200 miles a minute. The things that he's saying are the same ideas, but somehow they're more clearly articulated last night than they've ever been before. And I think I've been seeing all these videos. One of the most compelling ones that I saw was a girl who is 26. And she's like, well, here's a video of me 9 years ago when I was 17. And she's got a sign that says like Trump with an X through it. And she's like, I was protesting Trump, and look at my complicated message. No Trump. And this was one of these liberals who's converted over. And the thing that was super interesting about this is that she's 26 now. And on one hand, that's a fully adult woman. But at the same time, also a little bit of a child.
100%.
And when this girl, she said, when they shot Donald Trump and he stood up, I saw a strong man. And when she said that, I was like, this girl is at once crying for daddy and a husband. And not in a weird, like, I love Donald Trump kind of way, but what he stood for. You can
that is a strong man in the house. That is how our grandfathers were. That's how our fathers were before that. This is the renaissance of America coming back, where men were strong, and this is why they push toxic masculinity, Jason.
Well, and this was, what's the opposite of toxic? This was redemptive masculinity.
Right.
We need strong men, and we need virtuous women, and men are not women, and you can't just sever your genitals and put on a dress and take on. This is such an objectionable thing. And see, we're getting to the root of it now, Jason, because you know what? I'm not going to say, this is on both of our channels now. I don't want to do anything that's going to harm our ability to broadcast, but we need to, the First Amendment is so important. And you and I had a conversation offline yesterday about some harassment. I don't want to get into this, but harassment that you've now been receiving just as a result of hosting John Cullen and myself. And I bring it up because it's important for people to observe.
I'm going to probably drop that in the audience either probably later today or on Monday, so they know what's going on.
Yeah, I think it's important for people to know, because I'm not telling people not to look at other channels on social media. I just want them to understand what I understand about them so that they can form their own conclusions. But bottom line up front, George Webb's brother, who has been stalking, suing, and harassing me, my 80-plus-year-old retired parents who have nothing to do with my business or anything to do with them. Phone calls were placed to my ex-wife, who I've been divorced from for 17 years. This is just, and then now you'll go into what they're doing to you. But my point is, this is a desperate crew of criminal losers who cannot win on their merits, so they must cheat. And they've been suing me for 7.5 years. They will not let up. And it's the same collective that attempted to murder Donald Trump. And there is no doubt in my mind, this is not incompetence. You do not have collective incompetence. How many people are involved in planning a rally? There's no way that dozens or hundreds of people are simultaneously incompetent. And even if they were, we've seen these military snipers who say, look, you can't say that. I've been in the, not me, but these people saying this say they've been in the Army. They are fully briefed on incompetence. And this goes beyond. There's a certain amount of incompetence built into anything that anybody does. You go to the hospital, you make a movie, you're in the government. There is a degree of mistakes, incompetence. Mistakes happen. But every single excuse, every single aspect of this. Let's go back to another John Cullen, sort of seminal moment, the Vegas shooting. Even in that piece of FBI nonsense, didn't we have like daily or a couple times a week press conferences from Joseph Lombardo? We've learned this, we've learned that. Didn't they have like one press conference where the cops were like, well, I don't know, the Secret Service was in the building, we were in the building, nobody knew, we don't know what's going on. End of press conference. And then they run away from Marsha Blackburn. They won't answer questions. Merrick Garland says that the secrets are Mayorkas.
Did you real quick? I saw the video this morning. I don't think I'd seen this video before. Maybe just because I just didn't come across it. When they were ushering Trump into the back of the truck after the shooting, obviously, they push him in. He's still, I guess, fist pumped. And I see 3 women, right? And my wife is a powerful businesswoman. She does her thing, right? Mm-hmm. I don't think women have to necessarily stay in the house. That's not my conclusion in life, right?
Yeah.
I believe there's a place for women and place for men in life, and I think certain ones do better in certain ways. But there were 3 women standing outside that truck. I didn't see any of the men in Secret Service. Those women, I'm not trained in Secret Service. I don't know how it operates. Jason, they looked flustered.
Oh,
they
yeah.
looked like they didn't know what they were doing. They looked completely incompetent. They were not standing there with their arms to their side or in front of them with their guns ready looking. They were looking like they looked like there was chaos and had never been trained in a job.
Squad. Absolutely. And let's not make this about you and I being 2 men talking about women, because I saw another angle on that same armored SUV that you're talking about where a male agent opens the door as they're still on top of Trump, like he's keeping it open so they can get him right in there. And then there was a long delay where they were on top of Trump, I guess, waiting to hear on the radio that the shooter is down. And that guy with the door open at some point closes the door. So it's like, is the door supposed to be open? Is the door supposed to be closed? Are they preventing somebody from launching a grenade into there? What he obviously, and when they're on the ground, she even says, what are we doing? You're telling me the whole entire purpose of the Secret Service is to prevent the president from getting assassinated. It's not like aliens landed in the middle of the field and suddenly we have a procedure that we have no protocol for.
Right. We have protocols. You know the list by memorization.
Exactly. And you know what? If you're a helicopter pilot or something and the altitude alarm comes on and drops from wind or whatever, you don't start saying, what do we do? This is the moment you've been trained for. Everyone there should be operating on instinct because you need to do it while the bullets are whizzing over your head. Now, when Trump spoke about the Secret Service, we've also heard that most of them were like part-time, not trained from elsewhere in the DHS, not necessarily trained in Secret Service. We've got DHS police and Homeland Security investigations. Who knows where they got these guys from and girls, but it was just a mess. Now, Trump is obviously, when somebody saves your life, they're on top of him. Look, we got to give them that. The people around Trump who dove on him when the bullets started flying is undeniably, that is courage.
100%. I told my wife, I go, imagine being so invested and loyal that they don't know where the shots are coming from necessarily right away. Like they're just reacting, and you're putting yourself in front of a president and a human, knowing full well your head could be blown off at any other second. And quite honestly, when he was raising his fist, I saw a couple of the men in there actually like put your damn fist down. Like we're trying to like protect you.
Exactly.
Right. And I was like, I'm like that, like, and it just takes me back to America. And I can't speak for the rest of the world and other countries because I'm an American, right? But that's the level of integrity and loyalty that as Americans, we believe in at our core and our soul level, which is we will protect this place at all costs, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And here's something else I'll say. The first day this happened, in the first minutes, when people were saying, oh, this was staged, it's one of these things where it's like somebody says it, and now that idea is in your head. I didn't think of that when I first saw this, but somebody said that. And so now I'm thinking about that. I say, okay, let's just consider the possibility that this was staged. Because somebody said, oh, they're showing wrestling and they show the guy goes down and, cuts his forehead in wrestling. That's a well-known thing.
Blade job.
And then they start saying, oh, well, Trump has been in wrestling. And I said, well, I find this ridiculous, but let's go down this line for a moment. And then they show that picture of him down there looking at the blood on his hand. Then you start to think, I can see how the person made this correlation.
Sure.
But last night, when Donald Trump explained his thought process of being shot at, and see, that also occurred to me that ears bleed a lot. I don't think I must have known that somehow, because I remember thinking when they said that the bandage on his ear was a PR stunt, I said, that's ridiculous. The guy had stitches 3 days ago and he's wearing a suit. If he didn't have that, there'd be crusty blood on his hair. Like that doesn't look like a PR stunt.
He's an image guy. He doesn't want a bunch of stitching and blood all over
Who would?
He wants to make it look good and make it look right.
But Jason, even if it wasn't oozing 3 days out, it's going to have like black stitches and be all red and ugly. He's wearing a suit. You're going to put something over it.
100%.
And it's like an ear. So it's like an envelope sitting on his ear. Like what? It was the stupidest thing those people were possibly saying. And when you heard Trump say it, when he said, I'm never going to talk about this again because it's just too traumatic. When he said that, you see, it's very difficult to put yourself into someone else's shoes and to look at something from someone else's perspective. One of my favorite books, and you know what? It's the type of book that even if you've read it, and this is good advice for myself, you got to go back and reread it because it reminds you of things. And the name is a bit weird. I think if it was written today, it would have a different name. I'm talking about Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. I know that book well. I don't like the name because influence people sounds like you're trying to do something to manipulate them. But the truth is, if you break that down, you're always trying to influence people. If you want to ask someone out on a date, you call them up, you want to say the right things to influence them so that they think this is an interesting person who I'd like to get to know more of. If you're trying to do business, you want to influence a person. I'm trying to influence people to subscribe to the show, to watch what
my wife was trying to influence me on a restaurant last night and I wasn't having it.
Right. But the point is, there is underhanded subterfuge that can be used to manipulate people. And that's not what Carnegie talks about. Most of what he talks about is considering things from the other person's point of view. And it's so important. And when you stop to do that, like, that's what I was doing when because from my point of view, this was like, whoa. And then minutes later, it became this heroic moment. So kind of like everything was all right. Trump's going to live. Okay. I was already onto that. I wasn't that moment where he was down and he put his hand on his ear and he's looking. There had to be ringing in his head. And he's like, oh my God, am I about to die? I'm bleeding. I was just shot. What's happening? Right. And then people jump on you and you don't know what's going on. So then he's down there for a few minutes. And he's like, well, I guess if I was shot in the head, I should be dead right now. So maybe I'm okay. I don't know. And then when he said he could see the people, obviously he could. Someone took a photograph of him. So he could see people like, probably, you heard women screaming, people crying. And he sees everybody. He's like, no, wait, I'm all right. And the other thing, if it were experienced Secret Service, I don't think he would have been able to overpower them to get that fist bump up. They would have said, keep him down, get his head down, get him out of here. Right. It was an incredible thing, Jason.
100%. It was, and it's funny when you say like, so my mind works in two worlds. I work in very objective just because of my training, what I do for a living, etc. But I also live in conspiracy world because I've always enjoyed it. Right. So I'm like, holy crap, he just got shot. Now, my first thing is I watched wrestling. Growing up. And I'm like, okay, they blade. They used to use capsules, things like that. And I go, he was so fast going to like this and then down. I'm like, that's not, because I saw a lot of black pillars online. They're like, yes, this is all manufactured. I'm like, the speed at which that happened, I don't care how good he is. He's not trained to do that every day. Unlike, wrestlers who know what they're doing. And even they don't do it fast. They have to kind of like sneak away to get it done properly, right?
Right.
I'm like, no, something legitimately happened there. That man went down, right?
Yeah.
And he then came up and I was also looking at the blood and I'm like, no, that's blood. Like that guy got hit. Like there's something to that. And then my mind started going completely away from like conspiracy. Now the conspiracy is really not if it's real blood or not. The conspiracy is how many damn shooters? Because I know damn well, and we'll slide into the shorting of stock. But I'm like, when I later find out within less than 24 hours. So anytime I see a shooter, whether it's a school shooting or something like this from a political standpoint, I immediately, because I work with kids that are like this, I immediately go, what psych drugs was he on?
Yeah.
Okay, who are his parents? Was there a therapist involved? There's MK Ultra, there's hypnosis, etc. And within 24 hours, Jason, this kid has a therapist father and he's in a BlackRock commercial.
Right.
And I'm like, I guarantee you this kid this kid may not even known he was doing it. They're so good at this stuff.
That's a whole separate show for sure. And I don't think we know enough about these guys yet to get, but you're raising the important points. Now, before we get to the stock trading, there's so much more that we need to do. So let's talk about this for a second. I just sent you a link to this guy, Frank Preston. Frank Preston is the founder. He's dead. He's the founder of American Glass Research. Now, this is the company that is inside the building that the dead shooter was photographed on top of, that everybody sees the guy crawling around, that the mainstream is saying is Thomas Crooks, and that is the shooter. So this guy, American Glass Research, is interesting because Frank Preston is a British optical engineer, and he died in 1989. He was involved in World War I, and he's kind of like a super genius with glass. After World War I, he came to the United States and he worked with this guy who had invented a process and a device for polishing glass. And what is important about polishing glass is it's not about making it look pretty. You can increase the resolution of optics with these very precisely polished elements. So these guys were making lenses for satellites, and someone said, because he came to the United States initially to work with Kodak. And so someone had connected that to work that was done on the panchromatic camera that was used in the U-2 spy plane. Which I don't know if you know. I have not been able to prove that yet. If anyone has any additional evidence about Dr. Frank W. Preston working on the U-2 program or lenses for the panchromatic camera, I'm interested in seeing that. Hasn't been proven yet, but this is a claim from someone who saw some of my research about this guy. What has been admitted to is that Preston, was a civilian observer at the Bikini Atoll nuclear tests. And what's interesting there is something called what is it called here? Trinitite. Okay. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
I'll send you a link to that. So trinitite is a glass-like substance that is formed. Let me just read it here from Wikipedia. And I know that people don't like Wikipedia, but it is a glassy residue left on the desert floor after the plutonium-based Trinity nuclear bomb test on July 16th, 1945. And this glass is composed of all kinds of different things. They didn't really understand how it was formed. And it was a complex, material science is very interested in this. I mean, this was a new process, and, you want to make windows for rocket ships and stuff like that. There's a new kind of glass. So they admit publicly that Dr. Frank Preston was then invited to a Bikini Atoll test, and they haven't said why, but I presume it was to study the nature of this glass-like substance because he's a fancy scientist
Yeah.
and a glass expert. And so I don't really know beyond what I've just shared what relevance this has. And the reason why I'm bringing it up is because this American glass research company, to me, seems very much like an intelligence community cutout, meaning this is a company that does work for very high level, kind of like secret things that you need security clearances. And, it
Really?
just reeks to me of being a CIA cutout. And now take a look at their logo there. I've just sent you another link. So that's their logo. It's an A with a microscope inside it. And just click on that link I've just sent you from my X account in the chat here. So this is comparing this logo to the Freemasonic compass. And I'm not saying this is exactly the same, but I see similarities. And as you advance through the posts, you see I flip it around there so that when you flip, just go up, I think is the one. See how when the G, it sort of looks like a G when you flip the logo inside.
You're not wrong, man. I see it.
Okay. So I'm not saying this is the exact same thing. I'm not saying Masons control the world. I'm just saying this is an element of evidence that to me suggests that at least the person who designed the logo had this imagery, even if it was in their subconscious. Somehow this logo came to look like this. Now, a lot of people have focused on the fact that the company changed hands in March. I haven't gone into very much of that research. I'm confident it's accurate. But again, and they're saying like, oh, look at the connections. This guy who bought it, whatever. All of that just sort of fortifies what I'm talking about, is that this is a company that was established, I think, by the deep state. And so that means people running it already have the connections into the departments where, and I'm also, to be clear, I'm not saying that American Glass Research or anybody working there knew that Donald Trump was going to be assassinated. In fact, it would be more likely that they wouldn't. Even if Dr. Frank Preston was as deeply embedded in the deep state and had the highest top security clearance that anybody could have, that doesn't mean that his son or his nephew or whoever it is that took over after he died knew about that. This is all compartmentalized stuff. So all I'm saying is, even if they say, well, we do still have government contracts or whatever, and some agency, some person who we already knew called us and said, hey, there's a rally, we want to stage something at your building or blah, blah, blah. It probably was as innocent as that. And then, once they've got access to the building, they're not necessarily going to tell anybody, what they're going to plan to do on the roof of that building. They just gain the access and then everything else happens. Now, the other thing about Preston that was interesting, I just sent you another link, is that he was super into ecological conservation, which I guess it's pretty close to Green New Deal type stuff, but not really. I mean, there he is with a bird, and, he owned a ton of land there's a park now that is his, like, Preston Butler Park or something like that. So this is not just some, if you told me that the guy was sitting on the roof of a Dick's Sporting Goods or a Public Storage that was built in 2017, maybe he snuck up there. But there's something going on with this American Glass Research Company, and I see a longstanding deep state history here. Now, not to force the issue, but let's continue talking about some assholes that are screwing around with you and me, because you see, something interesting is happening in real time. And again, I'm not telling anyone what to do. I just want to share information that I know about and allow people to form their own conclusions. Now, an individual that a lot of people might have heard of, who I have in the past hosted on my show when I was deceived by this individual, and it's my understanding that you had a similar circumstance. I'm talking about George Webb, because he appeared in Butler Township, PA, and he's now reporting on this plastic company. Click on that image on the left, please. This is Corey Comparatore's LinkedIn. And all full respect to Mr. Comparatore and his family. Horrible. And Joy Reid.
This was the one killed, correct?
Correct. This is the individual who was killed. Just zoom in on that JSP, if you would, for a moment. He's worked for 29 years and 4 months as a, or if you can't zoom in, that's fine. It says JSP is a plastics manufacturing company nearby in the area, that he was some sort of an engineer, project and tooling engineer for 29 years and 4 months. Now go to the next image, if you would, please, Jason. That's a screen capture that I took from this George Webb video, which if you aren't blocked by him, as I am, you can look at his video from yesterday and listen to him declare that Corey Comparatori worked there for 33 years, which Corey Comparatori doesn't say that. Are you aware of the significance of the number 33, Jason?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So again, I'm not saying this is numerology or Jewish gematria or French gematria or the Powerball numbers. This is an embedded steganographic message, a hidden code that is intended, just like the logo for American Glass Research, resembles a Masonic compass. The number 33 is, I say, a Masonic message. Now, I think we spoke last week, just to connect to how I first got involved with Mr. Webb, or something that came up almost immediately after that. I think we were speaking last week about a guy named Peter Smith. I've just sent you a Wall Street Journal article about Michael Flynn and Peter Smith. And remember, this is where the whole Russiagate kind of thing started with how many emails were they looking for there, Jason? Could you maybe...
I recall correctly, it was 33,000.
Correct. Could you just do a search of this webpage for the number 33 for a second? How long was Michael Flynn in the U.S. Army? I can't recall. Can you? 33 years. Okay. 33,000 Hillary Clinton emails. Oh, no, sorry. Yeah, you got it.
Blocking me
Forget
from
it.
it.
But
That's why I was like, it's not coming up. It's blocking me.
But Flynn, he doesn't say more than 3 decades. He doesn't say almost 35 years. I mean, frankly, you know what? If I were in Cannes or something giving a speech about stereoscopic cinematography, or if I were at the British Film Institute, and even when, you know what, last year when I would tell people how long I've been living in New York, I would say more than 30 years, almost 35 years. I personally avoided the number 33, but these guys always say it. I want people to just look at how many times, look at the New York Post, look at the killer is always 33. You'll see some weird story, not always, frequently. And I am basically alleging right now that frequently that is used as a steganographic message, a message hidden in plain sight. So that's just a curious little thing. And it's also just curious that just as John Cullen starts blowing up like absolute crazy, as he deserves to, on Twitter, he's over 67,000 followers on Twitter. He's publishing videos that are getting millions of views per day, like more than a news station. He's putting out extremely compelling information that appears to be decimating this narrative that Thomas, what's his name, Crooks, was shooting on the roof. It's just like, I'm sorry, that's just destroyed day one. And so in my experience, Mr. Webb, which that is not his actual name, is George Swigert. But in my experience, this guy is a professional punch bowl turd installer.
He blocked me recently. I went over to look at his page. I was blocked.
Yeah, because you're consorting with us and we're explaining how he is a liar.
But here's the crazy part. I never even, I interviewed him, oh my gosh, 6 months ago. Had a really good interview before I knew what was going on. And again, I'm not even involved in some of the stuff you guys, I just, like what you've told me, I haven't even researched it much because it's not really my world.
Right.
I actually had a productive conversation with him. Obviously I don't know him, so he could have been lying to me, but I don't go into it trying to catch people. I just go into asking questions. And yeah, I looked this morning, I'm like, wait, you blocked me? I didn't. Everyone who blocks me, either I have someone on a show,
right,
or I just ask them a legitimate question. I mean, very rarely do I really go after people unless they go after me, but I'm like, why can't people have questions? And why? But again, if it's all set up, it makes sense why we can't ask questions.
And to be clear, this is my pure opinion. This is my speculation based on 7 years of looking at public domain evidence. I believe this to be true, but other people might look at this same evidence and come to a different conclusion. And if anyone's like, why does Jason always talk like this? I would invite anyone asking that to spend 7.5 years in federal court and see how it affects your approach to sharing public information. But I've just sent you another link there from Twitter, because people who are perhaps doubting, they're like, no, George is just there doing legitimate research, injecting wrong details, trying to get people to look at Corey Comparatore's plastic company instead of the glass company. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that anybody look at anything. No one should take any action based on anything that I say. No one should go after these people. No one should contact these people. I'm just sharing information. Now, this is a video from about 2017. When I first became aware of George Webb, we were investigating, you just click on the image on the right for a second, we were investigating this guy who Trump used to call the Pakistani mystery man. That's Imran Awan. And what was going on with Imran Awan is he was an IT contractor in Congress working for Debbie Wasserman Schultz, Javier Becerra, lots and lots of people in Congress. And he was accused, not by me or George Webb initially, but by the U.S. Capitol Police, of hacking the congressional email network and even stealing data. And so he was banned from Capitol Hill and barred from accessing the congressional network. And then he also ultimately was brought up on criminal charges for bank fraud of some kind, for obtaining mortgages where he purchased homes that he was then renting to people. So what we're looking at here is one of the homes that Imran Awan purchased using the fraudulent bank loans that he was charged for. This is 4809 Sprayer Street. I think it's in Alexandria, Virginia. Anyway, 4809 Sprayer Street, he rented out, and he rented it to a woman named Laurel Everly, who contacted me saying that she had seen the show, that she knows Imran Awan, that she lived in this house, and she shared certain bizarre circumstances about this house, including that there was a shed to the right, in this image, a shed to the right connected to the garage that was locked. And she, as a renter, did not have access to the shed. That's pretty common, that the owner has an area of the house containing their stuff that you can't access. But her issue was there was a light on in there that was on 24/7, and she's paying the electric bill. So she asked Imran if he could turn out the light. And Imran said that he could not, because it was connected to an air conditioner or a cooling unit of some kind, and he needed to control the temperature of the room. Now, do we think he's smoking fish in there, or does he have a server running? I don't know. But what we did was we did a whole video that's linked if people want to go on to X and look me up at JG_CSTT. You can go to this tweet, you can click on that Odyssey link, and you can watch the video about the hidden network topology at 4809 Sprayer Street. Because what we found was Laurel Everly shared photographs around the house and a video of her sons playing in the basement. And what we noticed in the background was people will recognize this from their own homes. One of these sort of like half-inch thick white coaxial cable that's stapled to the baseboard, running down the wall to a splitter that staples to the baseboard. And this is your cable box, where one wire is running upstairs to the cable television and one wire is running to a black, what I recognized as a Comcast cable internet router that had an RJ45 connector wire, you know, a category 6 networking cable running out of it into an RJ45 connector on the wall that is shared with the shed in the locked room that Laurel Everly cannot access. And a crowdsourced The Truth viewer contacted Cox Cable. I don't know why Cox Cable did this, but they confirmed that there was a Cox high-speed internet account at that house that was not maintained by Laurel Everly. She had Verizon Fios upstairs. That's where she got her internet from. So based on that evidence, we concluded that Imran Awan had an email server in that shed. Additionally, Imran freaked out when there was a flood of that basement because that's where his networking equipment was. And he used to come to this house every 2 or 3 days. And
let's do something real quick. Let's do something real quick. Because I got to stay out of legal stuff. No, it's all right. It's all right. I'm just gonna change.
These are my opinions. These are my opinions.
No. I know. I'm gonna stay out of my realm of stuff just because I got to be cautious. That's all. Let's do this.
Let me finish this because it's got nothing to do with
Imran.
When we came out with this evidence, which you will not be sued for because everything I have just said is true, and every single person involved is trying to get federal courts to enjoin me from ever suing them. So they don't want to get into lawsuits with me. But the point, and I'm not going to press that, but the point I'm making is when we presented all this information, the video to the left of that image that we just showed of the network topology is George Webb going to 4809 Sprayer Street the day we presented this evidence to show everyone. Let's play that video for a second. Can we? Can you get sound from X onto here?
Let's see here.
He goes to the location. Even if we don't have sound, we could just play it. You'll see what he does. Remember, the shed that I'm talking about is physically connected to the house. It's like under the garage or right off the garage. When you're in the basement, the wall that this cable box was plugged into is the interior wall of the shed. So here he is on Sprayer Street. We don't even need the sound. He's walking on Sprayer Street, and he's going to say, oh, well, I don't want to step on this story because it's kind of Jason's story, but here's the house. And he's going to say, here's the magical glowing shed. And he shows a shed in the backyard, not connected to the house. There it is back there. He says, that's the shed. That is not the shed. That's a different shed. The shed that I'm talking about is physically attached to the house. So he deliberately avoids showing that, and he shows something else. Now, flash forward to today. The reason why this is relevant, the professional punch bowl turd installer is right on the ground in Butler, PA. So like you, a well-meaning person who doesn't know this guy is going to say, oh, look at this. Here's an energetic, independent journalist who's on the ground. He's talking to locals. He's talking to police. This guy has firsthand information. Jason doesn't know what he's talking about. He's looking at the internet. He's running around New York. George is there doing firsthand stuff. But what does he do? The first thing he does is what is he even implying about Corey Comparatori? I don't know. But he's saying what? That guy was deliberately killed? I mean, it was obviously an accident. And he's trying to draw attention to this plastic company, saying that he referred to American Glass Research as Advanced Glass. So he's changing the name slightly. He's telling you Comparatori worked there for 33 years when the answer is 29. Why is he changing these facts?
So let's go back to history for a second, because actually I just got a note behind the scenes. So that Dr. Frank Preston, there's a Preston Masonic Hall in the United Kingdom, and they said it was believed to be adopted by the Dr. Frank Preston lineage. Now,
I love that detail.
I don't have enough details on that yet. However, let me take it this direction, because we also have, and what we're going to talk about as well, which is we have the Rumble and the Trump media group shorting.
Yes.
And that's not just something everyone knows how to do, right? Like that's a thing. Like,
if you're worried about lawsuits, let's handle this very carefully, because let me lay it out before we start getting to it.
And let's just like dance around this, because obviously there's stuff behind the scenes that I haven't talked about yet, and neither one of us want to get ourselves in trouble.
And I want people to understand, when I say let's be careful of lawsuits, that doesn't mean I'm gonna not talk about something. I just want to be very careful how we talk about this, because a lot of people, even though it's been admitted by Austin Private Wealth that a transaction occurred. I am not a financial expert. I am a novice. I mean, I have owned stocks in my life, but I don't know a darn thing about investments, about the SEC, about how this type of thing works. I initially said something about it being a short sale. Somebody told me, no, these are puts. So I am not a financial expert, and I am not analyzing the financial or technical details of that. I was presented with a claim. There was a lot of activity 2 days ago or something on Twitter where people were sending around this claim, which said that in layperson's terms, someone was betting against Trump Media and Technology Group stock, a put, a short sell. They were betting, according to the claim,
on the fall of a stock.
The fall of the stock. They make money if the stock goes down.
Right.
You can easily understand that if Donald Trump did not survive this assassination attempt, Truth Social, I mean, it's like a Mission Impossible movie post Tom Cruise. No one's going to see that. It's worse than that. That would be the end of Truth Social.
Right.
So people were putting out this claim. So they have confirmed that there was this massive transaction that then the company, Austin Private Wealth, says there was a error where a third party involved in placing this order or doing something accidentally multiplied not just that, but every transaction for them that this third party was happening by a 10,000x factor. So that affected Rumble, that affected Truth Social, etc. So the claim that they're making is that this was a pure mistake. We need technical financial experts to dig into those details to tell us whether or not the claim that this was a legitimate mistake is plausible or implausible. I cannot evaluate that claim. I'm just telling people the company claims this was an innocent mistake. The internet claims this was somehow sinister. So let's look at the "this is sinister" claim, knowing that it hasn't been proven and we don't know the answer. One of the elements that was used to support the unproven claim that this was sinister is that James Baker is a senior policy advisor at Austin Private Wealth. So the first thing that I did was I said, well, let's look at that. And to be clear, the James Baker that they were referencing, although they didn't necessarily say this, is James A. Baker III, the guy who was the Secretary of State under George H.W. Bush, longtime lawyer for the Bush family, huge Bush crony, neocon Democrat, undoubtedly a deep state scumbag.
Right.
But he's still alive. He's 92. He's a lawyer.
Is he really? I thought he passed on a long time ago.
No, he's 92. And look, you can call people deep state scumbags because that is pure opinion.
That's opinion.
It's pure opinion. It's my opinion that that guy is a deep state scumbag. What does that even mean? You know, you get into trouble when you start accusing people of specific crimes, like having foreknowledge of an assassination and engaging in insider trading and stock sales that are, you know, financial crimes. You do get yourself into trouble when you make definitive statements about those things that you do not have evidence to back up. So the first thing I started asking these big accounts that were just blowing this thing up, Mike Adams, the so-called health ranger, Blue Sky something, there were a few that were pushing this out. And I just noticed the kind of like frequency, the activity, they call this chatter, right? Yep. I saw what seemed to me to be a lot of social engineering chatter around this. And see, unlike what John Cohen is doing, there's an event, Trump is shot, there's chaos, you know, not on the scene. I'm talking about on the internet. We're all sort of in the dark. There was maybe 20 or 30 minutes where we just like, where is Trump? What's going on? Like, it felt like a long time from when he went down there to came back up. And so then throughout that day, actually, videos started trickling out, little evidence, and Cohen starts to zero in on things that are becoming clearer. And as people, even jerks, are questioning him, he's sharpening the point on the pencil. And what he's getting to is becoming more and more focused as he asks more questions and moves in on it. The opposite is true in the case of this short sale as it pertains to information surrounding the connections to George Bush and the Bush family and James Baker. Because I started asking these accounts, well, wait a minute, where are you getting this information that James Baker is connected to this company? If someone immediately sent me a screen capture from the company webpage, here's our team, and it said James A. Baker III, Senior Policy Advisor, I'd say, wow, they're onto something. But nobody was doing that. They were saying, oh, here's information about James Baker doing this with the Bushes that has nothing to do with this transaction that happened years ago. And here's this scumbaggery having to do with the Bushes, and this scumbaggery having to do with James Baker, and this and that. And they're like, hey, whoa, stop with all these 5 tweets about everything other than what I just asked you. Where is this evidence? And after several times of asking an account the same question, it just becomes clear that this fake named, no profile picture, or, I mean, it's difficult for me to say this now because I have a cartoon caricature of myself as the profile
Well, but
picture.
you put yourself on camera all the time too.
I'm on camera all the time. It says Jason Goodman, founder of Crowdsource the Truth. People looking at my face, looking at that cartoon, obviously realize this guy's doing something with cartoons sometimes. But the point is, these are accounts that are using false avatars, false names. We don't know who they are. They're amplifying this crap like crazy. And so I have looked very thoroughly, and I have found no information that links James A. Baker III. Forgive me, there's one other important detail. Some of these accounts that are operated by people that like Blue Sky something, which purports to be, dropping hot information. Right. I say James Baker, and I say, where is the information about James Baker? And they start sending me information about, see, this is interesting. I didn't realize this guy's middle initial was also A. Huh. Here's the next thing. So then they start sending me links to this guy. Do you recognize this guy, Jason?
Let me bring him up. James A. Baker.
And again, we only cite Wikipedia to see a picture of the guy. So this is James A. Baker, government attorney. Oh, yeah. He, if we zoom in, was the FBI general counsel. Right. Oh, sorry. I know you can't zoom easily here. Forget it. He's the FBI general counsel right after Andrew Weissman. Okay. And Andrew Weissman was the FBI general counsel right after Valerie Caproni. Now, I spoke at the top of the call about the fact that you, as of a couple of days ago, have become the target of harassment from George Webb Sweigert's brother, David. He sent a letter to me, which was a copy of letters he's been sending to the Florida Department of Health and people at the NIH, where I identified his name on a staff directory, SRC group or something like that. He's sending around, allegations about you with the hope that they'll investigate you, that they'll mess with you. He, David, George Webb's brother, started suing me in 2018. And the case was taken up by a U.S. District Court judge by the name of Valerie Caproni. A lot of people have heard me speak about.
This is the one we talked about a long time ago. Caproni.
Yes, right. I've spoken about Valerie Caproni quite a lot because she was also an FBI general counsel. I've just sent you a link to her. So here's how this progression goes. Valerie Caproni becomes FBI general counsel in 2003 under Robert Mueller. She remains in that position until 2011, when she gets kicked out because the House Judiciary Committee accuses her of being a filthy criminal, which she is. She's broken the law 400 times or 4,000 times, violating the Fourth Amendment by investigating people with these national security letters, which totally violate the Constitution. So she gets thrown out of the FBI, and Andrew Weissman comes in as FBI general counsel. Andrew Weissman, in his own book, says that Valerie Caproni was his mentor. Okay, this is a tight crew. So Caproni today is a U.S. District Court judge. And when George's brother sues me in 2018, the case is assigned to her. Now, it's a ridiculous case based on fraudulent claims that never goes anywhere. But I was very inexperienced. I am not an attorney, and I was very inexperienced in litigation at all at that time. So the case went on for very many years. And in 2020, while that case was still going on, I got sued by the Emmys. And oddly, that case also went to Judge Valerie Caproni. Now, that's weird because they don't specifically tell you in the Southern District of New York that cases are randomly assigned. I actually went to try to find that so that we, the people, would have some notion of how the judicial branch works, and specifically how that local segment of our government, the Southern District of New York, how the court works? Is that straight business for the court to just be assigning cases to the same judge who used to be the FBI general counsel, who
Didn't President Trump have a ton of problems with the Southern District of New York?
Yeah. Well, not only that, Valerie Caproni, before she was the FBI general counsel, we could go back to her Wikipedia. She was the assistant U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of New York. Oh, do they have that in there? Did they? Yeah, here it is. She was the head of the organized crime division in the Eastern District of New York. And that's a really interesting office because she was in there with Loretta Lynch,
Jeez.
Burl Howell, who's now a judge against Trump in Washington, D.C., Andrew Weissman, Jack Smith came into that office. So this is the Lawfare crew right here. This is not all of them, but this is an important part. And this is how they've penetrated the federal court. Judge Caproni, I have made all of these allegations in a case that is before the Second Circuit Court of Appeals right now. I have directly accused Judge Caproni of conspiring with George Webb's brother and the CEO of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences. That's the body that gives out Emmy Awards. She has conspired with their CEO, a guy named Adam Sharp. I think I've sent you this before, but here it is again. They conspired initially to install the FBI into Twitter. And for people who want to go on to X and look me up at JG_CSTT, there is a new section called articles. And we have this article, The Twitter Coup. And you can see right there, Barack Obama and Adam Sharp. Adam Sharp is the guy that I'm talking about who brought this lawsuit against me. He received, I allege, an email from George's brother. And I have the email, but they will not tell me. If I were to utter the email address on this broadcast right now, even though it's in a public domain document that people could read on pacer.gov, if I were to say it, I would be in contempt of court. I'd be in violation of a court order, and I could be thrown in jail. So they're doing the same things. They're attempting to do the same things to me that they are doing to Trump. But I am about 1/10,000th of the importance, and I'm receiving commensurate application of their.
How? Here's a question for you, because obviously, like someone myself or you are a very different boat than Donald Trump. And
yeah.
How? And this kind of takes us forward too. How does Trump get through / out of this? Like how? Like
he's doing it right before our eyes.
I mean, you literally have to take down the entire system, Jason.
Yeah, but last night during his speech, that was incredible. I really do think we have. This is the.
Did you stay? Did you stay for the whole thing? Did you make it?
I watched it live last night. Now, apparently there was opera singing at the end that I turned it off by the time the opera was going on. But everything he said, and when Melania came up and all that, I was watching. That was the best speech he's ever given. That was one of the. Now, obviously, the part where he goes into rally mode and he's being all Trump and everything. I'm talking about where he's recounting that was standard. I'm not saying that was bad. That was just I could see how people who don't like listening to Trump. I love that. I think
rallying
it's hilarious.
The base, rallying conservatives, getting
the
rah-rah speech.
But the part where he was talking about the assassination and his plans for moving forward with America and how he wants unity, you're seeing that. You're seeing that. And it's also, it doesn't feel contrived in the least. Like, honestly, when I saw him looking at his wife and his wife looking at him, all these people like, oh, Melania doesn't want to do this, that, she's not there with him or whatever. Look, I haven't had a marriage that survived more than 3.5 years, but even in that, people who have been married know that you can get to a place with your person where it's like, you know what? But you could tell, I mean, they've been married 20 years or whatever. So it's like, when you're in your 50s and 70s and you've been married that long, you can see how the romance cools off a little bit. And even if she does love him, this is pressure on humans. She's like, hey, I don't like all this negativity. I mean, who would like that? So obviously she's withdrawing from the public.
I have secondhand knowledge from a personal advisor to President Trump, who I know at a distance, but I know them well enough. I talked to them.
Yeah.
And the running joke, this was a few years ago, the running joke when he was president was when he would write a tweet that was, you remember how it was like mean tweets? And
Melania would tell him not to send it.
So Melania and this person would give him a verbal slap on the wrist of like, you can't like you're not wrong,
right?
But back it off a little bit. So for anybody out there, like he does have some filters he's got to go through.
But when you last night, not you, when I don't know what anybody else felt. When Melania looked at him and he looked at her, that was love. This is such a real emotional moment for the country. And Donald Trump, I love it that this has happened, that he survived, because the incompetence of the evil that they're trying to train on him has turned him into a living legend beyond anything I am aware of. Now think about this for a second, Jason, because last night, so when they had like Kid Rock and Hulk Hogan,
I joked to my wife, I said, Kid Rock is not playing to his base right now. These people don't understand, like he is.
But it still worked.
Like, it's kind of funny.
It still worked though, didn't it?
Yeah,
I mean, that's the thing. They turned it into a rock concert, and it's like, you know what? This is happening because like when you and I were like 20 or something, if we were in high school together, going to a Kid Rock concert is something that you and I might have done. And so now when we're 40, 50, whatever, the Ronald Reagans of our, young adulthood they're gone. This is not what conservatism is anymore. And yes, the times have changed and things are different. But you know what? Before she spoke, I was like, who is this Amber Rose person with a tattoo on her head? But I was moved by what she said. And I realized how ingenious it was to have her and bring her in. She has kids, I think, and she has concerns, and she doesn't want crime, and she wants to be able to do business or make music or whatever she's doing. And I thought that woman gave an incredibly powerful speech.
Well, it's also a redemption speech, right? I mean, obviously she has a checkered past, and it's this, and I grew up in a great Christian community, but one of the things people do, and everyone does, I don't care your faith, is there's the judgment of humans, right? Humans make judgments sometimes. We have to back ourselves off and kind of realize, that wasn't a good idea.
Right.
And, my own mom, recovering alcoholic of 20 plus years, right? Sober, does great, doing great, right?
That's great.
But if people didn't give her a chance, if people just wrote her off, like this Amber woman, if people just write her, and afterwards people are like, oh, why are they letting this? They could call her lots of names, even in the conservative movement. And I'm like, yeah, maybe it's not ideal in the public image, but you know what? Isn't that what we're supposed to be doing, is bringing people over to our side to help them get through something, talk to her? Isn't that really what Jesus did? I mean, he went to the people who go to the prostitute and be like, hey, like, we need to not do what you're doing, but I'm here to talk to. Like, let's figure out what the real issue is. Like, why are we doing this in the first place? Like you said, when someone sees Trump come up like a liberal and they're like, that's a father figure to them, that's a husband figure to them. Like, it brings us to, he's putting out a purpose, not just for him. Like, Americans are starting to pick up this purpose, right? We have to put our country back together. We can't just depend on him to do it because he was almost gone.
Yeah.
We have to take it back.
Absolutely. I agree with what you're saying. I mean, you know what? For me personally, the decision of putting a tattoo on a forehead or being gay may not be right, but I can recognize that if somebody, I don't want Amber Rose to kidnap kids and tattoo their foreheads. I don't even mean to mention her. I don't, whatever an adult wants to do to themselves or with another consenting adult, I don't even want to be involved in. If it's legal, Go do whatever you want to do. That's your life. I don't even know why we need to talk about this. I will defend their right to do that because you know what? I have a feeling that Amber Rose and I agree on a lot more things than we disagree on. And as you're saying, if you let the one sort of most obvious disagreement stop all conversation.
And how do you bring, even from a liberal standpoint, right? Like I'm not liberal, and it's obviously just a label. I don't live in that world. I don't think that way necessarily, but I did spend a lot of time in the Boston area for a couple of years with work, and I was around liberal people, but they were really more and they were all family oriented. And I'm like, if we're going to fix this place, we actually have to be willing. I'm not going to sit down with someone who's degenerate and literally doing harm. That's not what's going to happen. I'm not going to sit down and talk to somebody who's a pedophile and they're continuing to do it over and over again. That they belong somewhere to either be fixed
isolated
or can't be
from
fixed,
society.
Isolated from society. However, what are you going to do with when you have a drug addict or an alcoholic or a porn actress or somebody who's been isn't it really our duty for all of us to kind of take a moment and go, okay, how can we help this person and not bring them over to the Republican side, but how can we help this person and bring them back to safety of life so they can operate in a productive manner again, which actually builds our society back up?
I look at it in a similar but slightly different way.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily, and maybe this is me being selfish, I'm not looking for people that I can help, but my attitude is there is a very limited number of people in my life who have come to me and gone out of their way to make a sincere apology, to seek forgiveness.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is done, I believe it is extremely important to acknowledge and accept. That doesn't mean that I think that every apology is sincere.
Sure.
But I think when a person like Amber Rose comes and does what she did, she's saying, you know something? I've realized that I was incorrect about something, and I'm coming to apologize to all of you and let you know that I realized my own shortcoming. And if you reject that, you're losing an opportunity, an important one.
Absolutely, 100%. Before we go, I don't know if you saw this or not. Do you follow Into Thin Air?
I'm not sure. Is that a Twitter account or something?
Yeah, the Twitter account. He does a lot of earthquake stuff, weather stuff, etc. But he just put out. It's breaking, and they're trying to confirm this. Sniper seen using zip line off the water tower.
I've heard about the zip line.
I don't know. Now I have not looked at this.
How could that not be something that somebody sees?
So I have not looked into this yet. This just popped up and I shared it and I saved it real quick. But if there's any, like if this is at all,
going to be video of that. How would there not be?
If there is, come on. And not only that, the interesting part about that is, John's information becomes laser focused at that point because
wait. Let's be careful though, because what I detect happening is a movement to try to make anything about the water tower seem ridiculous. So if the zip line is not true or not supported by evidence, we want to be very careful how we evaluate it. Because see, John went right to the water tower, and this video of somebody on the water tower, George is there saying, 29 is 33, and American plastic research American glass research is advanced glass, and plastic has something. They're trying to muddy the waters potentially. So do we have a photograph of a zip line? Where did the zip line story come from?
I'm trying to find out right now. This was just brought up.
That's the piece I would want to convey to viewers as the most important thing. When somebody makes a claim, whether it's George Bush sold Donald Trump stock short with Jim Baker, or somebody was ziplining down from the water tower, even if that claim appeals to your bias and you're like, oh yeah, water tower, more water tower. Oh yeah, George Bush, I know he's a scumbag. We want to be extremely scrupulous about how we...
Oh, absolutely.
Skeptical, about how we scrutinize this, because they want to... That's what I detect was happening with this selling short of the stocks, because there's an important component of that story that we forgot to touch on. We'll just give this a second. I contacted that company not because I was like, ooh, selling short. I was like, this seems like a story that's got a lot of false information in it. And that is a limited hangout. You take one true thing like, hey, there is this transaction. We don't know if that was, something untoward or a legitimate mistake. It's not out of the realm of possibility that a mistake could happen.
Right.
It would be a coincidence, but who placed that trade? It doesn't even necessarily mean that this company knew anything. If you went on to E-Trade right now and bought a bunch of stock or did whatever, and then somebody somehow found that in the records of E-Trade doesn't know what's inside your head.
Right.
So it just felt to me. And then the other thing that people were putting up that I sort of discussed in a video I did yesterday was that, and this is Mike Adams was the first guy I saw doing this. He is a reprehensible piece of shit. Forgive me for saying.
So
that's my opinion.
I have heard so many positives, so many negatives. I don't personally have a viewpoint on it. I don't love some of the stuff he does necessarily, but I don't know.
I've interacted with him personally. And
like in person.
I've been to his place. I've been to his studio. I've walked around his, supplement pill green powder making factory. I've observed him walking around his place of business with like a bright orange gun strapped to his belt inside his place of business. It's his right to do, but I found it odd. He's the first person I've ever worked with who did that, had a gun on inside the studio while we were walking around talking. He's pretty fat for a health ranger.
How long ago did you meet him?
5 or 6 years ago.
Okay.
He's only gotten fatter. But the point is, he's also hosted this guy, Dr. Paul Cottrell, who is not a medical doctor, or at least he wasn't when I was dealing with him. Although
why does that name sound familiar?
He's a George Webb schmuck.
Oh God, not back to that.
Yeah. Well, but the point is, this is a network of social engineers who want to present themselves to us as legitimate social media influencers, journalists, whatever they want to present themselves as. And
we're back to paid people being influenced.
I don't have evidence that they're being paid. I don't have that evidence.
The John Cullen thing, like people being taken society to a certain direction.
That I have evidence of. And so Paul Cottrell, if people go on to odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, it's free. You can search for Paul Cottrell and you'll see a video where I initially thought, okay, here's a doctor sharing information about COVID. Let me contact him. He's in New York. We're talking about different, things. And I tried to reach him. And, he put out a video just insulting me, threatening to attack me. And I was like, dude, you're purporting to be a medical doctor and you're threatening to beat people up on the internet. Have you ever heard of the Hippocratic Oath? What the hell is the matter with you? So it came out that he wasn't yet a medical doctor at that time. There was some article he was reading about a logo being emblazoned on an ambulance. And he said that the logo was embolized on the ambulance. And I was like, how are you a doctor when you don't know the difference between an embolism and something being emblazoned on something? You strike me as a moron, Paul Cottrell. And I'm not trying to insult the guy. I'm just trying to give people a flavor. I don't just hold my finger up to the wind and decide this person is a social engineer or not. I spend a good amount of time in good faith trying to legitimately interact with these people. And I gauge the strangeness of their responses. Like, in other words, when I ask a person 3 times, what evidence connects Jim Baker to this firm, and they send me 3 different Wikipedia pages about 3 different people who are not the Jim Baker
you're
talking
getting
about.
Evidence.
Right. We're getting misdirected from something by a person who's trying to waste our time. So the reprehensible thing that Mike Adams did the other day, and the reason why I'm going on this tear about him, is because without even confirming that these claims were true, he's like, oh, look at these charities that this company is giving money to. And he lists the ADL and Hadassah and the Austin Jewish this and that. Leaves out the YMCA, leaves out St. Jude's Hospital.
Oh, did he?
Yes, there's Jewish charities, there's Catholic charities,
he angled
there's
it very
Christian
Jewish.
charities, there's non-secular charities, and he's focusing on the Jewish charities. How do you know they could give $50 to this charity? What are you implying, Mike Adams? You're stoking hatred of Jewish people online based on lies. So
and you said that in the phone call. You said this is, and you're Jewish. You said,
yes.
But either way, that this brings up a it brings up the Zionist conversation, which
Wait,
obviously everyone's.
whoa. Just to be clear.
Yeah.
This is the part that everybody gets hooked on, because I am not defending
No, I know.
Zionism. I am not defending Judaism in its totality. I'm not like some crusader for the Torah. I'm saying in 2024, I just walk around the streets of New York City,
Right.
and maniacs look at me. I'm not carrying an Israeli flag. I am not a Zionist. I believe Zionism was created by the same entity that created Nazism, and that the entire battle between Zionism and Nazism, the conflation of Judaism with Zionism, is intended to do exactly what Mike Adams was trying to do. Oh, the Jews.
Right.
There's one, get him. So I'm just
and
saying.
what he was doing was he was pointing in that direction, and he was stoking flames. Because I thought too, like I did. That's just my opinion. I looked at the posts, and I'm like, oh my God, here we go. They're bringing up the war again. They're bringing this back up, and it brings up. I have no problem with people having their opinions on it either way, whether they're Jewish or not Jewish. But at the same time, it brings up so much hate from people. It's very, very disconcerting.
I agree. And to me, these types of things, religion, family, sexuality, these are not public topics. Like, I would like to come and interact with a person and acknowledge that what they want to go do with their wife or their husband or their boyfriend or their girlfriend, I don't need to observe that, be a part of that. I don't even need to be aware of that. As long as they're not hurting anybody, just like, why is this even in our conversation? Correct. And I feel that way about religion. I just, so the problem that I had with Mike Adams is he's an idiot who puts a lot of false information out into the world. He's a coward, he's a thug, and he's a Jew-hating moron. And if he wants to talk to me about that, he can place the gun down on the table, and I will enter any room with that coward. I'm not challenging him to a fight. I'm just saying, I'm not afraid of him. I'm not afraid of talking to him. He is a despicable human being, in my opinion. That's all I'll say about it.
Well, Jason, there is a lot more that's going to come out. I mean, I told this to John the other day. I said, we're only, six
Unbelievable,
days?
right?
6 days. I just froze up, but that's okay. It's my camera. We'll finish up. We're 6 days past this crazy event that obviously no one expected what to happen there. And I'm just really thankful that we have a group of people out there. And I say everybody, whether it's you and John, myself, or anybody else out there who's on the good side of doing this. It's so incredible that we've even broken this open as much as we have in 6 days. And the power, as President Trump said in his original inauguration, power back to the people, which is what you talk about, which is crowdsourcing the truth. I mean, it's much appreciation to even, whether it's founding or creating, just that idea.
Well, thank you, Jason. And thank you for having me on. Thank you for being brave and for not cowering from the harassment of these pathetic, cowardly social engineers. I really appreciate you. I appreciate your audience. I appreciate all the work that everybody is doing. And I want to also remind Brave TV viewers that tonight at 7:30, John Cullen's regular Friday show, there we go, John Cullen Investigates, is going to be on. So I look forward to seeing everybody there.
Fun show.
I'm sure he's going to have insane breakthroughs again.
I'll tell you, everybody, I'm usually running around the house, kind of hanging out. It's kind of one of the nights my wife and I sometimes have off a little bit. We can just kind of like decompress a little bit. And I'll just pop it up on my phone and listen for a little bit. I don't always get to the whole show. These two are very entertaining just to listen to. Entertaining, not in a bad way. Just like they're going through data and information. And so it's both educational because I'm learning something, but also they have a really good rapport, which I appreciate. So as always, Jason, I appreciate you. Have a great weekend. Study hard. I know you're going to.
Thank you very much, Jason. And thanks to everybody for watching. Have a great day.
For Jason Goodman, I'm Dr. Jason Dean. Hey, not only love, serve, and help, we're just trying to find the truth, everybody. So whoever you are out there, whether you like us, hate us, we're just a couple of people that stumbled upon each other. just trying to get information. I'm a knowledge-driven person. I just want to find truth with whatever topic I'm dealing with in life. I'm going for the truth. That's all we're doing. So take this, help it motivate you and drive you to also find truths. That's all we're doing. Unfortunately, this world is full of sometimes not nice people, and we will just navigate the waters. But have a great weekend. This is Brave TV. Take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye, everybody.
Knowledge.